Okay, this is what we're painting today on this video. I've titled it Silver Bells. Oh my gosh, what fun this was. Look at that sparkle. Oh my gosh. You guys know how I just loved to put the bling on my Christmas ones, and this one's really got it. This was super fun, super easy. It's going to be a great quick ornament to give as a gift this year, so I can't wait to paint it with you. Let's get started. Okay, we are starting by base coating this surface, and I am going to base it with a 2-inch foam roller. I've base coated this side the color that I want, and it is a mix of winter blue and snow white. So I'm going to paint this other side. I had painted white on it and then just didn't like that color. It was just too stark. I wanted it to have a little bit of blue tint to it. So I'll just put both colors out. I'm going to pick up the white on my roller and then go into some blue and blend that right here on my plate to make a very pale winter blue color. And then we'll just roll it right on here. And I will apply 2 coats of this. So I'll let this coat dry. I'm very lightly rolling it out to get as much of that texture off of there as possible. And I'm going to let this dry. It won't take very long for it to dry. And then I'm going to roll on a second coat on here. And then we'll be ready to come back and start adding some lines and detail and stuff on here. So I'll be back when we're ready to do that. Alright, our base coat is dry here, and it was that mix of winter blue and snow white. So now I want to transfer just a couple of lines on here, and I'm just going to freehand it, but you can lay your pattern on here. We're going to paint the peppermint up here and down here in first, so that if any elements fall across that, then we'll already have it painted in. So I'm just going to transfer on some lines here. Let's see how I've got it drawn down here. So the ball of the ornament continues to go around, hopefully more like a ball than an oval. This will connect with this side, but you probably can't even see any of that. There you go. And then this area down here is where we'll have our peppermints. So we're just going to have some stripes going this way. Okay, and then down here we're going to bring them this direction. Okay, so let me get this set up. Okay, I've got this raised up a little bit easier for you to see. We're going to paint our stripes in with Country Red. I am using a 1 round brush here. I'll make it a little bit flat so I can just go ahead and stroke in my stripe. Just go all the way down. I'm not quite hitting my lines, but I've adjusted for the width of the stripe that I painted in here. Okay, so there's our upper stripes. And then down here, we'll put in some stripes down here. They don't have to be near as fat as those up there. That one's a little fat. Oops, I'm messy with that one. Okay, we'll clean up that. See if it's still wet enough for me to clean it off. Should have got a much smaller brush to do that with. And touch up. Now I'm going to go beside these and make a narrow stripe beside them. Let me fix this top edge of this one. Should be kind of flat at that line up there. Okay, that looks better. Okay, so now I'm going to take a 10-0 liner and we're going to put in a narrow line right beside that one with red. You got to put some water in your paint. This brush looks a little messed up on the bristles. So let me grab a different one. Could have spaced these a little bit farther apart. It might have been a little bit better if I had. This one, after we shade and stuff, might not even show up. Very thin line. Your paint needs to be inky consistency, and you are up on the very tip of that brush, so we can get those nice fine little lines on there. Okay, let's take some white and we'll just go ahead and make a highlight across here real quick. With our round brush, we're just going to create a highlight across here. Okay, we're going to shade this one just like I shaded this one. We're using deep burgundy is the color that we're using here, and I'm using a Chisel 8 flat brush. It's got short bristles, so I don't have to worry too much about my paint getting crazy carried away. We're just going to load a little bit on the edge for floating, and we'll go along the top edge. We're doing soft pressure. Your brush is damp. You dip the very corner in your paint, work it in. A little bit too much water, so I'm just going to touch my paper towel and get the excess off. We've just got a little bit of paint in our brush. And then we'll go along this edge. A little bit more paint. And I want it to come out a little bit farther. A little bit wider of a float. I don't want it to be so narrow. Okay, so that's all we're going to do to the peppermint for now until we get everything else done. When we go back and shade all the outside borders, then we will figure out what to do there. Now for this piece, this little piece here, and this piece, I think we're going to paint them in a separate color. Okay, I've painted the bottom in gray sky, which is not a huge variance from the color we have on our background, but I'm going to make this a silver top and a silver bottom. So we're going to paint it in just one coat. Ought to be fine to paint over it with some gray sky. I might come back and darken that, add a little bit of black to it, make it just a touch darker, but for now we'll just leave it that color. And then this little section down here, I'm just going to paint in with some white. Grab a smaller brush here. And then I'm going to go get my pattern transferred on. Just a nice easy coat. I'll probably take 2 coats to get it a nice smooth layer here. A little bit of water in with your paint will keep it from being thick and leaving lots of ridges and stuff, so you can keep it smooth. Okay, I'm going to let that dry and then I'll apply a second coat on there. Now for transferring on our pattern, we're just going to lay it on our design. I'm going to get a piece of gray graphite paper. Find one that's not all used up. It's got a little bit of graphite still on it. Okay, and we're going to lay this on here. And the parts that we're going to transfer on is the ribbon and the bells. Now, try to make your bells as round as you can. If you have one of these, you can lay it on there and get the circle for the bell, and then come back in and transfer on your detail lines. We're just going to line it up and see, I got my white too far up there, it looks like. So I am going to transfer that line so I can adjust that. Needs to be that low, and then our ribbon will be just a pretty easy little outline. And the reason I'm showing this is because I've had some people ask on my videos, how do you get your pattern on there? And I forget there are some people who haven't been watching my videos for a while and have never seen me do it, so I am going to show how I do it here. If it's something you already know how to do, then just go ahead and fast forward through this part. Now my bells, I'm going to lay my template, my circle template on here. Find the one that fits it, which I think is this one. Let's see what size that is. 1 inch. It's a 1 inch circle. And I'm going to draw this circle. And then move it over to this one. And draw this circle. I'm going to remove that and then transfer on these lines. And these lines down here I'm not going to worry about, because we'll just come in and add those later. So let me lift this up and see if everything transferred okay. Oh yeah, plenty dark enough. Don't have to worry about that not being dark enough. So I'm going to adjust this down here, which was our winter blue and white. So I'll just brush mix it and get it as close to that color that we base coated this in as I can. And that's going to be a little bit of trial and error by painting it in and seeing how well it blends in with the color above it. Go back down and add another coat of white on here. Okay, and when that dries I can erase that pencil line if I haven't gotten paint on it. Alright, so we're going to paint in our bells, and I missed a line here, I see. Our bells, we're going to start out with the same color we did down here, the gray sky. Paint those in with the gray sky, which you won't notice a whole lot of difference between it and the background, but it will show up. Let me get this ribbon. This line of this ribbon needs to come up here. Actually, we'll bring it a little bit further over. Yeah, it needs to be at the center. I had it to begin with. I don't like that. I couldn't really see my line on my pattern. We can make this a little bit bigger. Because I had drawn some holly leaves on here, but I'm going to change that out and probably put pine needles on there. So okay, let me see if I can erase this line down here. Alright, I got that color pretty close. It's good enough because we'll be shading at the end, so if it doesn't quite match, we'll get that covered up. Okay, so our bells we're going to paint in with gray sky, and our ribbon we're going to paint in with the country red. At least those are the colors I'm thinking about going with right now, so I might come back to and find I've painted it a different color, but if I have, I will make sure that you know what color that is. Okay, I kind of want to come back and show you when you're base coating your design to just base coat each item individually. So like that's a little piece of the ribbon poking through. I want to do that separate. I want to do that separate. I just don't want to come in and cover this whole area with red and lose where my lines are. So you want to try to retain where each section is, and then hopefully you won't have to come back in and transfer your lines back in. They'll be there for you already, and this will get you ready for the areas that will show you the areas where you need to shade much more easily. Okay, so I've done all that with just a round brush, and I'm going to go back in with everything else and do it with a bigger brush, and then I'm going to come and erase all of my graphite lines, and then put my second coats on. But this is a way to retain all of your individual areas and make it much easier when we move on. So 2 coats on each section, and if you don't paint over your graphite lines, you can come back and erase them, but if you put paint on them, they're in there forever. So you'll just have to make sure you get enough paint with the next coat to cover it all up and not worry about it. Okay, so I'm going to get all my coats on here, 2 coats each on every aspect of each section. Alright, I'm going in and erasing my graphite lines after I have my 2 coats on, and it is completely dry. I didn't paint over my, or at least I tried not to paint over my lines on the outer edges. These lines in here that you can see, they're set in there because I painted over them. But that's okay, because we'll be adding some layers on here and they'll get taken care of. Now brush your eraser stuff away from your paint palette so you don't get any in your paint. And then you can get your pattern back out if you need to, and we're going to transfer in our lines back in so that we know where we're going with everything. Okay, we're going to have some lines coming off like that. Look at my pattern here. I had some coming off of this edges too, you know, optional things. Okay, and then this curves here, and this is folded that way. And then our bells, I kind of covered up my lines here. Let me do this with a pencil so you can see it. So we have our piece here. That kind of goes around the bell. And then we can go ahead and add these lines in here. So we lay this on here, get it lined up. And then you can just freehand them in here, or again, take your paper and lay it under and transfer in these lines. And this should be more of a circle here, and they shouldn't be quite up that high. These two, I'm going to erase them. A little circle. A little circle. We're just going to see a little bit of these because this bell's turned a little bit more down. Actually, the hook should be actually right there. Maybe not quite up so high. And then this one's hook is right here. Okay, so now we're ready to start adding some detail onto our design now. Okay, couple of things I forgot to do here, or actually one, was we're having a banding. Not only was this one going to be white, but a banding below it, below and above our peppermint here. So I'm going to paint that in with some white. And if I get on my peppermint, I'll have to go back and reshade probably, but I also wanted to tell you that you could paint your ribbon in with blue if you wanted a blue ribbon, and you could base coat it in with Victorian blue, and then you could shade it with like a deep midnight and highlight it with some turquoise blue. So if you wanted to change your ribbon to blue, I was originally going to do it blue, but then I felt like it would look too much like a 4th of July ornament instead of a Christmas one. You could paint your ribbon in green if you wanted green. So you'll want to paint this banding in when you paint your peppermint. I just completely forgot to add those lines on here when I transferred on my pattern, and just realized I didn't do it. So just a quick couple of coats on this, and we will finish these up later. I'm going to fix the edge of my ribbon here so it pushes that white more behind it instead of that white laying on top of it. Okay, let's get ready to add some detail onto our bow. So we're going to want to add, well, we've got deep burgundy on our palette. We're going to use that to shade with. Okay, so I'm going to use an 8 flat and see if that's going to work for me. Get some fresh deep burgundy out here. And then, of course, we spritz our palette with water. So we have clean water for our floating. So when we need it, we just go right over here and pick some up with our brush. So our brush is damp. We dip the toe in, work the paint in. We don't have to work it in until it's transparent. Just work it in until it's nice and soft. And we'll begin adding some shading on here. We won't see too much of it at first, but it will develop as we go. We're going to shade next to this loop, and I'm just going to go ahead and go right in between each one of these lines that I put on there. Bring those out. So I'm taking my brush next to this knot, bringing it up to the line and following the line with the tip of the brush. Next to the knot, follow the line. Next to the knot, follow the line, and then finish next to the knot. If it's easiest for you, you can just go all the way around the knot and then just come back and do the lines there if you want to. We're going to do the outside edges. I'm just going to go right over those wrinkles there because I'm not really sure. I'm going to keep them in there. Okay, we're going to go here where this piece of the bow lays over. And right next to that knot. I'll go next to this one. Here. Try to keep your shape of your bell here. using an 8 flat. Go there. I'm going to put a little bit down here. All the way. I'll do this one the same way. We're going to go in here. That's going to be our deep area in there. And then we're also going to go down around this edge. And we'll make this outside edge here a little bit darker. A little bit more paint and water. You've got to pick up both. Blend them on your brush. Go around that part of the bell. And then we'll go along this outside edge here. And we'll do the knot. The top and the bottom. Okay, so that is our initial shading right there. And I'll put a little bit more back in here for this first one because I had a little bit too much water in my brush and it didn't leave as much paint down as I wanted it to. So that's our first shading with deep burgundy. I think before I get ready to deepen the shading here, I'm going to grab more paint on my brush. I really want this shading to come down in here a little bit more, so I am going to bring it down into there. So it can be just a little bit deeper down in there. And I think I'm going to bring the outer edges over a little bit as well. So I'm loading more paint on my brush and letting it go over just a slight bit more and a little bit less water, so I can keep this a little bit darker, but I got to have the water so I can walk it over. So water is important. You just don't need a ton of it to get this wider, but we have to have it to be able to walk it. If we don't have water in our brush, it's not going to walk over. It's just going to stay right there on that edge, because when we move the paint, we're moving it over into the water edge, so it helps the paint move over and get lighter as it goes, so we don't have any stark lines on there. Okay, I think I'm just going to repeat with the burgundy, the deep burgundy. Just give it a second quick shading everywhere that we went before. I just want to darken it a little bit. And we're going to come in and make this even darker, just slightly darker. Don't want to turn our ribbon black. Okay, we did a little bit here, and we did a little bit here. And then I'll redo my lines here. Just with the edge of my brush. So we can go ahead and add, if you want these out here, some wrinkles out here, then we can add those little puckers. I'm just on the chisel edge of the brush here, just creating a little bit tucked stuff there. Okay, that's really good for our shading. So that was deep burgundy, and I just went over everything twice, but when I went here and here, I brought it out a little bit more so that I could, you know, have a little bit more. It really makes the ribbon look fatter and more tucked under when you can bring that shading on the outer edges over a little bit more. Okay, we're gonna get ready to highlight, but first on this white that we added up here, I am going to add, and you don't have to add this if you don't want to, but I think it's going to give it a little bit of pizzazz, some white pearl metallics onto the white. I've already added 2 coats onto that part, and so I'm going to add it on to these other areas. And again, this is a step you can do before you paint your ribbon in. I'll let this dry and then come back and apply a second coat on there, but I think that's going to look very pretty on there. Okay, so for a highlight for a ribbon, I'm trying a new color, Scarlet. It's a new color for DecoArt. At least it's new to me. I can't remember if this is a 2017 or 2018 color. I'll have to get my colors out and check. So I'm going to see how well it does highlighting on here. I usually like to highlight with Tangelo orange, and this has got a little bit of red in it, so I think I might like this a little bit better. So we're going to highlight along this part. Here we're going to do next to our lines some of this. A little bit of highlight on them. We're going to just tap a little bit of this into the center area right there. And we'll come along this edge. And along this edge. I'm going to go on the inside of the ribbon edge here. Here along this edge. And let's see if I can use this smaller brush here, or this larger brush. So you'll want to go probably to a smaller brush, whatever type of brush you're using. I'm using a flat brush, so if you're using an angle brush, just go to a smaller size. Give that edge just a little bit. And then on the knot, we need some on the outer part out here. We shaded on the top and bottom, so we need to highlight out here. Okay, now I think it's going to be helpful if we erase any graphite lines that we have left that we haven't painted over. Oh, that's looking pretty. Okay, I have mixed the scarlet and white equal amounts, just brush mixed on my brush. And I'm just going to skim over just a few bright areas with this color. Don't put it everywhere, just in a few places. Okay, and then we're going to come back and add a back-to-back float highlight, which is what I like to do on my ribbon to really make it pop. So, put just a touch of this on our highlight here. Just a tiny little bit will do you right there. Okay, so after that is dry, we are going to glaze over our entire ribbon because I really want it to be, you know, a good red. So you have two options here. One is to use cherry red, my favorite glazing, washing, whatever you want to call it, color. It is just a beautiful color. And then my second option is the DecoArt Media Fluid Acrylics. This is Pyrrole Red. Either one will do, whichever one you have. So I'm going to use the media paint. Got a little crusty in it. Let me get that out. Okay, so I'm going to take my paint, dip my brush into some water, go dip into my paint and pull it out over here and create this beautiful glaze of color. A little bit more water and a little bit more paint. So we've got probably a 90% water, 10% paint. I touched my brush to the tip of it to the paper towel, just going to wick out the excess. And then we're going to come in here and paint over the entire bow with this color. And it's not going to take down our highlights, so unless you've got more paint than water, you need to have a lot more water than you do paint. I've been known to glaze over things more than once, so if it doesn't seem bright enough for you after the first glazing, you can do it again. Just make sure that you have mostly water with a little bit of paint in there. Really brightened up our bow, and we'll let it dry, and then we're going to come back in and do our brightest highlight on here. Alright, so while my ribbon was drying, I went and put my second coat of the white pearl metallic on my white. So now you definitely have to make sure this is dry, or it's going to turn your bright highlight pink. You want some fresh white. And we're going to side load a flat brush. This time I moved up to a larger brush, a 10. You can use an angle brush if that's what you feel more comfortable using. I'm going to grab a mop brush. And we're going to create a bright highlight right across our ribbon here with a back-to-back float. And I'm going to mop that. It kind of softens it. Clean my mop brush. Mop it again. I'll fix this edge up here. It needs to be a good edge. we'll go over to the next one. And we're going to do it here. Gotta make sure you have water in your brush, so it's going to keep that paint from being as opaque, very opaque. We want it to be a nice soft color on there. And that one could use a little bit more. Soften that down in there. We're going to put a little bit of this. You got to make sure you have water in your brush. You're working the water and the paint together. You don't have hardly any paint really. It's very watered down paint, almost as watery as that wash that we put on there. A little bit down here. Maybe a little bit. Little highlights hitting it there. I'm going to take the water edge and really soften that down in there. You can put a little bit behind this. Water edge, soften it down. Mop brush, soften it down more. Okay, we're going to go across this. Actually, let's take that off of there. We're going to go the other direction because our highlight was on each side out here. So we're going to keep that going that way. We're going to put some down here on our lower ribbon. We're going to put some right about here, I think. Okay, I'm going to have to remove that because I just messed it up. Let that one dry. I'm going to go over here to this one. Kind of showing you that that part is coming more at us, so I think I'll do the same thing right across here. And I'm going to put just a little bit of this up on the very tip of the brush. A little highlight along that edge. Okay, there we go, focus. Very tip toe of this brush. think just a tiny bit along this edge. We're going to be having a lot of this in here covered up by our greenery, but you know, just in case. I want to take our red, and I want, even though we are not going to see this when we're done, I want to connect the these things. I'm going to make sure that the pattern is drawn out with these two things separate, and then with the whole thing with the pine needles, so you can make a choice how you want to lay your pattern on here. I want some it to be connected. Like I said, we won't see this probably when we're done, but for now, for me, it helps me visually, because if I ever wanted to just paint this with just the bow and the bells, I would want to know how to do that without the pine needles. So that gives you an option. If you don't want the pine needles on there, then you can paint the strings on there to connect it to that bow. And I'm going to make my handle here. Come back in and paint that red line. So this one will go over. And this one will go over. Okay. We're going to start working on the bells now. The bow is done. Okay, I do want to go back in and tuck a little bit of darker color back in there. So I'm going to take my country red and a little bit of zinc and just mix them together right here to make a dark red. This is zinc right here. It's a very light, well, it's a medium gray color, but it's a more transparent color. And I'm going to tuck a little bit of that back in there just to create a little bit more darkness. And just put some of this in our key shadowy deep areas, because we don't want it to take over. We just want to create a little bit more depth. Okay, one more place I see. Right here, I'm going to be up on the very tip of this brush because I'm using a 10 flat, so I just want a little bit right next to that bend right there. I don't want it to fill the whole area, just be right next to it. Just a touch more here. Okay. There we go. Like I said, probably that right there I won't even see that I just put in there, but it's good to know if you just want to paint this bow on something. Alright, we're going to move to our bells here, and our zinc is what we're going to be shading with. Some water on my palette here. Side load for a float. I've moved back to this chisel brush because it has the short bristles. And we're going to go underneath here. A little bit more water in my brush. above that as well. We're gonna go put just a tiny little, I'm using the corner of the brush to get it right there on the very tip of this. Can't really tell where my right there. Load water and paint. And we're going to go around this spell. Go around this edge. It's really a dark line there. I don't like that. Remove that. Try painting that in again. So I'm going to work the paint into my brush a little bit more to soften it and move it over into my brush. There we go, that's better. Come along this edge. This part here. I'm going to erase, see if I have any lines on here to erase right through here. And then these lines down here, we're just going to fill in with some of this gray. This is zinc. Just going to fill in our a little bit of water. While I have this, I might as well go down here. We're doing the same thing down here on the bottom of this, so I'm going to just go ahead and paint this in. Okay, I'm going to erase any lines here. That wasn't quite dry, so I can't erase that. Put my paint back in down here. Alright, back to our shading. I'm going to go with the zinc again and really darken over here. I lost my bell shape down here. let's go to the next bell here. And we're going to go around this bell. Go along this edge. A little bit back up here. Alright, since I've got my gray on, I might as well go ahead and do the bottom down here. So I'm going to shade next to that. Up here at the top, this is still with that zinc. I'm going to shade up there. Shade along the left side and the bottom there. Do the same up here along the left side. A little bit across the top here. Okay, let's get ready to add our highlights on our bell, and then we can see if we need to deepen anything. Alright, our highlight's going to be with Snow White. So we're going to go along this edge. Along this edge. Bit right there. Okay, we'll create a really bright highlight right here just by dabbing some paint in there and then taking the water edge and softening it around. Do the same thing down here, just a little bit of paint. Kind of soften it right here. A little bit brighter right there. Go down here and put some highlight on this edge, and then we'll just tap some right there. Create a little bright highlight. Go up here to this edge. And we'll tap some here. Water edge to kind of soften it where we tapped it. Gives it just a little bit of a brightness. I have to redo that one, or do it a second time to intensify it. Let me wide angle out just a little bit so you can see the whole ornament. Yeah, that one I'll definitely have to redo. And maybe a little bit brighter down here on this one. Our bells look pretty good. I might tap just a little bit brighter. Maybe give it a little bit of a reflective light over here, which is just going to be a tiny little bit of paint. Okay, I think those bells look pretty good. Let me wide angle back out. And they look pretty shiny. Let me go up here and brighten up here just a tad bit more, right here. Okay. Shape a little bit better. Okay, I think those bells look pretty good. Now, for my bells, totally up to you. You can add some glamour dust on here, which I love glamour dust on anything that is Christmassy. This is a silver, and then we have ice crystal. Now ice crystal will keep it the color that it is, but just make it shiny. So I think that's where I'm going to put my glamour dust. And I'm going to get my lines in for my pine needles, and we're going to paint those. So I want my bells to be blingy. Your bells do not have to be. You are the judge of how your bells look. I'm not going to paint over the holes and the bells. And I'm also going to do the down here and up there with this. What a fun design. Now you could leave it right here with just the ribbon and the bells, and it would be perfectly gorgeous. You would not have to do anything else to it. My think I'm going to put some pine needles on mine. I don't know. I'm going to sit back and look at it. I might change my mind. I want to get a couple of coats of this on here and make sure that it is dry before I add any more lines on here. But I think that is turning out just gorgeous. I think while that's drying, we're going to shade with our zinc around our white areas here. Water. Definitely need more water. Need to work it into my brush more. That is way too dark for me now. So I'm just going to remove it. And try and float that again. There we go, much softer. I like that much better. I think we will continue this all the way around. Our ornament. This is zinc. And I think we'll put just a touch of it on our white edges. Actually, let's just do the whole thing. Alright, I think my Glamour Dust is dry, so I'm going to go off camera and get a second coat on there. Okay, so I'm changing this to be white all along this edge, and then the zinc will be on the other side. Kind of like we did everything else. Everything else is lighter on this side, so we'll just keep this side lighter. Still want to stay off of my ribbon. And we'll keep that side darker. And I think I've decided not to put any pine needles on here. I kind of like it the way it is. Okay, since I'm not adding the pine needles, I decided I want everything about this ornament to shine and sparkle. So I put some Glamour Dust on my bow and on my peppermint. I did not put it on the white stripes or the background. So it's on the bells, the bow, the peppermint, and the top and bottom of the ornament, but not on the white stripes and not on the background. And I think that is just going to make a gorgeous ornament that's really going to pop. I think I like it much better without adding the pine needles. I think that was going to be too much. So you could always add a third bell on here, put one in here if you wanted, which I might go ahead and add a third bell on there, and then I'll come back and show you. It'll be painted the exact same way, so you don't have to you know, worry about the detail being on there. I don't think my glamour dust is quite dry. So we had a 1-inch circle. So I'm going to show you how to add something on here if you want it. And I'm going to put it right through here and behind these other two. I'm going to paint it all in just like this one. When I come back, it will be done just like these. Okay, I thought I'd come back and show you a little bit. I base coated it in with the gray, so now I'm just going to do everything that I did to those, shading with the zinc. Oops, paint on the wrong side of my brush there. I'm just going to go right over those red lines. I'm going to repaint them in. I'm not going to worry about them. Up here. On that little thing, let me zoom in just a tad bit. So you're seeing my design process right here on camera, and this is what happens sometimes. I get to a point and it's like, wait a minute. I want to add more. So all of this side gets shading. And I'll come back in and repaint that red line like I said when I add the one for this one. Okay, so there is our shading. We'll add some highlight on here now. Tiny bit up there. Then we'll create our bright highlight right here. I got a little bit brighter one right there. More of a highlight across this because it's getting a lot more light on it. Okay, I'm going to paint in my little, I'm only seeing one hole on this one, so I'm going to paint it in. And paint my little ribbon in, or my little string. And I'll paint the one that I painted over back in. And then we'll add a third one. Now if I could get the paint to flow off my brush, we would. and now we just got to add our glamour dust onto this one. And put another coat on our bow. Try and keep it off my ribbon there. Although that ribbon can have glamour dust on it too, because it can match the ribbon above. And keep it off of our hole there. I need to go back and repeat that. I'll just go ahead and add a little bit into there. And darken my hole right here. We are done, except for adding one more coat of glamour dust. So adding a third bell on there is pretty easy, because we didn't have to paint a whole bell, we just had to paint part of one. And there, I think that fills up the ornament a little bit better. No gaping holes, because that's where I was going to put my pine needles. So I'm very happy with how this turned out. I think it's a beautiful ornament. Down here so we can see it a little bit better. I still got to do my second coat of glamour dust on my bow and up here and on this bell, but I think that is just a gorgeous ornament. I love it. I had so much fun painting this one. I think it's going to be a quick, wonderful gift. You can use it as a tag. Now the back, you can do the same thing on the back and have it reversed. You can stamp a message on the back. I think on this one particular one, normally I paint something on the back, but I think I might just leave this one plain and just sign my name on the back of this one. But it was a fun ornament. I really hope that you enjoyed it, and hope that you paint it and post pictures and send me pictures. And I loved painting it with you, so thanks so much for painting with me, you guys. Give me a thumbs up if you liked this one, and share my video. Leave any comments that you need to, and I'll get back with you. And thank you so much for painting with me. I'll see you guys on the next one. Bye bye, everybody.